This is the Trading Psychology Podcast. This is VP, creator of No Nonsense Forex and author of the book No Nonsense Forex Trading Psychology. And with me, as he is every episode, it is the globe-trotting Rob Reinhold.
Well, hey, Patrick, it is nice to be back, and it's nice to be back talking with everyone. And yes, I've been to some very cool places, down to New Zealand, met some of our Maverick Forex traders down there, and then I met a new Forex trader that just ran into him and started talking to him. So very cool. Good to be back.
Nice. Yeah, that's the benefits of being visible. I think I just walk by most of my traders and we don't know who each other are, and that is the way I prefer it. But yeah, let's go ahead and move into something different that we're going to do this week. And what I'm doing is, if you guys know, I started my channel in 2018. And it got really popular really quick, which you're like, wow, that's great. And that is great. But you get a lot of people that, A, you don't want, and just B, are just wrong for the channel overall. However, I think there are two, this is a two-part series as far as I've created it so far. Maybe we'll have a third, but a two-part series where there's two specific traits that I think, even though these initial haters had and how most of these people just left the channel immediately, I still think that a lot of us tend to have these particular tendencies lingering around in our heads. And sometimes they come out a little more when trading is stagnant or when trading is bad or when the market is slow or something like that. And so I wanted to identify this particular trait of No Nonsense Forex hater and kind of see what Rob thought about it and see if there's anything we can do about it, because I wouldn't bring this up if this was just one of those traits that we just kind of laugh at and blow off, because there are some of those. But Rob, let me, you have a couple of YouTube channels as well. Maybe you can relate to a little bit of this, but I'll give you a quick list of the people I had to deal with in the comments section who really tried to give me a hard time early on. Now, the first one, and this is something I don't think applies to anybody who listens to this podcast right now. If you made it this far, this doesn't apply to you, but the super emotional guy. And I've made fun of this person in the past on future videos to where I said, look, these are lines on a screen, because it's always on the technical analysis stuff for some reason. People, I guess because they just spent so much time and effort and I would say emotion too, because they used some of these tools and they worked in the past sometimes. And that makes you feel really good. It makes you feel really smart. And so when somebody finally comes in out of left field and starts bad-mouthing them, that's going to trigger a response. And I get it. But people like that, to me, just have really no chance to make it in this industry. To become that 0.1% margin of error it takes to be good at this, if you have those type of emotions, you're not for my channel and you're not for this market. You need to go find something else to do. The next one was the bad reading comprehension guy. I feel like I talk very clearly and explain things really well, but sometimes people just still don't understand it. And so they don't ask for clarification. They get really angry. So I guess it goes to the super emotional guy too. So that's another person that kind of comes and goes. I don't really spend too much time trying to explain things to them, because I think they're a lost cause, and you can't spend your time that way. The third person is, I got this so much early on, and then I just never, ever got it again, was the language police. So I do curse sometimes in my videos, and this would make people very angry. And I guess these people are on a crusade to go to every single YouTube channel they visit, and if they curse, to scold them and try to get them to change their ways. And this is so delusional that, again, you can't spend time responding to everybody. So this is just another group of people I would ignore, because I don't live in their world and I can't comprehend their world. So I just didn't even try.
They're improving the world one swear at a time. If they could just take one swear out of the world a day, it's gonna be paradise at one point.
Right. No, it justifies their existence for being here. And that's great, I think, right?
It's effing great is what it is.
It is so fucking amazing. Anyway, But yeah, before we get to like the real meat of what we're talking about here, I just kind of want to go over some of the really silly ones to me, and see if you had any experience with these type of people, Rob, and if there's any you want to add to this list.
We're pretty new to YouTube, so I don't have a ton of experience with this. And frankly, I don't spend a lot of time even looking at comments. But my favorite, and this has happened just a few times, where we'll put out like a 45-minute video, and the comment will be like, "You're wrong," or like, "No, it isn't." And it's like, wait, like there's 45 minutes of content in here. If you're going to want to fight, can you be a little bit more specific? So the comment guy that I think is funny is the fighter. And I say the guy because it's inevitably going to be a guy 99% of the time. But they just want to fight. They just want to fight. And they're not even concerned about anything other than just getting in an argument. So it's just not even worth anyone's time.
And it's more than just they want to fight. They want your attention. They want to take your time away. I call these people time vampires. They want you to stop everything you're doing, a busy man like yourself, and give a random person 30 to 60 minutes of your time arguing back and forth over something that's never going to get resolved in the first place. Yeah, so all of you budding or early YouTubers out there, if you ever see these people, they're tough to ignore because their arguments are so silly or lazy or whatever the case is, but just do everything you can to ignore them because it is a one-way road down. Anything else you have to say to that, Rob, before we move forward?
Yeah, I would just say, the internet is full of good and full of bad. And there are so many wonderful things that happens every day on YouTube, on Reddit about, I'm in several Reddit threads of traders. I never go in there comment, but I get some emails and I jump in there just to look at what people are talking about. And all I see is this wonderful, loving community of traders wanting either to help other people out or to get help from other traders. It's awesome. And then you got the dicks. You know what? You just have to ignore that. There is so much more positive and more beauty out there. But, these little things can get under your skin. And my advice is, and as you said, if you give them your time and energy, they've won.
Yeah, we do not let the terrorist win here on YouTube channels. And I agree with you, Rob. That's why I never was on Reddit, because before Reddit, there were forums. And exactly as you said, if it's 5%, super insecure people or trolls or whatever the case is, it takes down everything. That's all it takes. So it just wasn't where I wanted to spend my time either. Now, but the one type of person that they weren't even haters. Well, sometimes they were haters to where they didn't like the fact that my videos were 30 minutes long. They didn't like the fact that my first maybe 5 or 6 technical analysis videos was kind of breaking people down and getting them away from what they'd been told their entire trading lives. That this is what you need to use, and you need to go overbought, oversold, blah, blah, blah. These are the only indicators out there. All these things we were told for as long as the internet's been around, they were just completely wrong. I felt like I had to get them away from that first in order to introduce something new. Now, I have probably closing in on 300 videos on my channel now. I haven't looked in a while, but I still get people today that comment on one of those videos. They're like, "Are you ever going to tell us what to do? You just keep telling us what not to do." I'm like, bro, there's 300 videos. Maybe, just maybe, you're going to get there. Probably sooner than later. So it's just really impatient people that at the end of the day aren't looking for the service I was providing. They're not looking to sit down and learn something new with a lot of moving parts. It's actually pretty easy once you figure it out, but takes a little bit of time to learn. What they want above anything, and this is what most Forex traders want at the end of the day, is a shortcut. That's it. And I think when a lot of people realized that my channel wasn't going to give them that, I think people found that I was going to be an indicator channel and like, oh, cool, shortcut. And it wasn't it, and that made them mad. Because, Rob, one of the best/worst things I ever did was allow people to go to my contact form and ask me a question. Because I get much better questions now, but back then I would get nothing but the laziest, most horrible questions, and I would actually have to sit there and answer them. And then at that point, they thought I was their personal help desk, and they would start asking more, even though I specifically told them not to. It's just the bane of my existence. If you remember the Forex Q&A podcast, that was the one thing I couldn't get over. I would spend the first 3 minutes just complaining and trying to get these people to ask good questions, and they just never did, because all they really want is the quick route there. What are your top indicators? Here's my system. What do you think about it? That's all they ever wanted. They didn't really want to learn at the end of the day. Now, I guess you're not going to experience this too much in what you do, Rob, but before we get to the reasons why we think this occurs, how much experience have you had with people like this, just being in the business overall?
Well, Patrick, I'm going to say something that is going to hit very close to you and sting a bit. It's going to sting on me because I'm also talking about me, and I'm talking about all the other aspiring traders or people that are now professional traders out there. You got into this business to find a shortcut. So we're all the shortcut people. We're all the shortcut people. That's who we are as people. We could have gone to college, got a degree, worked in a company for 45 years, and got a small retirement at the end of it. But we're all the shortcut people. Every single one of us is the shortcut taker. The first thing that you need to do, that I need to do, that everyone needs to do, is fully recognize that's who we are. Now, there's a great quote, I can't remember who said it, but he said, once we finally admit who we are, we're finally free to change. I love that quote. I love it. Once you finally accept who you are, now you can actually change. So we're all the get rich people. We're all the shortcut takers. That's who we are. That's why we got into this world of trading, and is why we got into Forex trading specifically.
And you are 100% right, 100.00% right. I don't know anybody, I don't even know if it's possible, to come into Forex trading, or what has really turned into crypto trading, as far as kind of like the quote, get rich quick type of trading, and say, you know what, I want to learn this, but I want to go really slow, and I want to do it right, and I want to take my time, and I want to fail a lot. We don't enter the market with that mindset. I said it before, I wanted to leave the restaurant industry in 2 years, not 15. So when this Forex thing came along, and when they dangled that whole leverage carrot in front of me, I took to it right away. But of course, like everybody who does that, it doesn't work. It only puts you in a bigger hole. It only makes you more frustrated. And that's why, Rob, I tried to be patient with these people. I didn't yell at them. I did say, hey, look, here's the answer to your question, but this is not the way. I know this goes against everything you thought, but I thought maybe, just maybe, if they just kept going with it, they would see the light. And I don't know if they did or not, but you're absolutely right. We didn't get here because we wanted to go slow. So I do take shots at the people who took shots at me because I suppose that's just how I am. But the people on the contact form who made my life miserable for a good 2 years, and instead of just telling them that they were going to fail, I kind of tried to steer them in the right direction. I just don't know if it worked.
Well, what happened, Patrick, was that we all tried the get rich quick, and we all quickly learned that, it's a little bit tougher than that. And so then you had people at your stage, at your first stage, saying, hey, how do I make it quick? And you're like, hey, dude, you can't. And they're like, no, I don't want to hear that. And I've said many times in this podcast that if today Rob were to go back in time to 22-year-old Rob and literally talk to myself face to face and tell me, chill out, slow down, this is going to take time, I would say, get the F out of here, old man, I'll do it myself. I wouldn't believe it myself. So this is just who we are, and that's what we have to admit. This is who we are as people, and most of us has already gone out there and found out, it's harder than I thought. It's harder than I thought it was going to be, and it's not going to be a get rich quick thing. It's going to take some work. I think we've all gone through that part. And I think you just talked to the people that hadn't gone through that yet.
Yeah, and I just looked this up, Rob, as you were talking. I have a tool that can show me how many people are looking for something on Google, and they're pretty liberal. You don't have to get it exactly right. I just looked up even today for a Forex course, 3,600 searches per month. There's something with 5 times that volume out there, 18,100 searches per month. Can you guess what that phrase might be, Rob?
How to get rich quick in Forex?
Forex signals.
Oh.
They don't want to do the work themselves. They just want somebody else to tell them what to do. So it's even a thing today. And like I said, the reason why we bring this up is not that this is something that our listeners probably feel often, but I think it's still there. Because it was for me. Every time my trading would suffer, or any time I would make some money, but then I would take it all the way back down to break even, and I felt like I just wasted 5-6 months of my life. I would say, man, is there maybe maybe not a substitution, but a supplement to my trading now that I can add on from maybe somebody who else is really good at this? You start grasping at straws. You start searching for all these directions, and as we just said, Rob, it's not the way. It's not the way ever. But let's maybe break down why this is happening for a lot of people, and then, as we always do at the end, what we can do about it.
I think it's a great way to take this on because in the end, we all react to things we need or find that are necessary. And whenever someone is in a situation of desperation, this is where they start to look for shortcuts. So if you were, let's say you've got, you don't have enough money for rent by the end of the month. Oh my gosh, I heard about this Forex thing. That's going to force you to take shortcuts. Like you aren't even consciously choosing that you're going to take a shortcut. You're just thinking, oh, well, let me take a shortcut. And I've even had traders, it's crazy. They'll trade really well. And then all of a sudden, one month they go crazy. And they're like, oh, I had a big balloon payment on a real estate deal that I needed to make. And I'm like, and you thought you were going to make that in a week? But it's just because they are in that point of desperation. So just a comment and a caution to anyone out there, when you feel that desperation, your Forex account is not the answer. I guarantee you, I will bet a lot of money against you that if you are in a desperate time and you are trying to get money quick and you think your Forex account is going to produce it for you, I'll take the other side of that bet every single time because I know there's no way you can trade correctly with that mindset.
And even though we've spoken about desperation before, that's a perfect link to something I actually forgot to mention. And it's also the fact, too, that people, especially back then, and probably even now, they're so conditioned to just assume blindly that somebody out there creating content is out there to scam or out there to charge them a lot of money. I forgot one of the things that a lot of people would say, too, is like, you're just doing this so you can charge us money later, whether that's for indicators or a course or a trading room or something like that. And that was never my intent. But how do you... There's no way to prove that. You just have to keep making content for free until those people go away. And that's what I finally did. But I understand it. And the reason ties into that whole desperation thing you just talked about. So, for example, you have heavy Forex trading populations in places like Nigeria and South Africa. Two areas that, they have their rich people, but they have a lot of poor people too. And because of that, enter into the chat hordes and hordes of Forex scammers. That is almost a culture out there, to where it's not much of a culture anywhere else, but that's really something they had to deal with. So it's hard to trust anybody out there. But the whole reason why that culture existed in the first place is because so many people were looking for a way out. So that desperation leads to people probably falling for a scammer or two, or falling for a paid course that's just going to tell you stuff that's already on the internet for free, or something like that. I think that, you said before, you're going to tell me something that stings a little bit, and it did. But I have a feeling what I just said is going to sting with a lot of people too, because I think before you found the route you ended up taking, you went a lot of misguided directions, let's just say at first.
Let me add on to this. And again, hopefully if you've listened to all the podcasts, you know that I don't pull punches and I will say things that will make you sting inside. This is one of them. Whenever you look outside of yourself for answers, that's wrong. I shouldn't say it's wrong, but it's the wrong way to handle life. Because if you're in a situation, you say, oh my gosh, like I need $1,000 for rent by the end of the month. And then you say, oh my gosh, what about my neighbor? Or, oh my gosh, I think I saw my friend had some money underneath his bed. And if I took it and then I replace it back before he can see it's gone. Don't ever look outside of yourself. Always look inside. Look inside. What can I do to help make $1,000? So I really think when you get into this thing of desperation, it's very easy to channel it outwards to where you need help from others. And what I'm saying is try to channel it inwards to where then all of a sudden you say, I need to get more serious. I need to make a plan. I need to spend more time doing this. I need to do you see how much more powerful that is? But when you go first to look at external sources, that's desperation. And that's all shortcuts. That's all shortcuts because you aren't willing to do all the steps to get to that eventual goal.
That's true. That's why petty crime and violent crime goes up in down economies, because people get desperate and they start doing things that aren't inside themselves. They start doing things they normally wouldn't do. And so you have, unfortunately, normally good people resorting to, scamming or stealing or, something even worse sometimes. So yeah, I fully agree with that.
If you just channel it inward, always think, and this is something I've done in my life, and I think it's a really good thing to do. Whenever I'm to a point where I don't like where I am, I always say, the reason you are where you are is from you, not other places. I don't ever try to play the victim game where, oh, this person did this to me. Well, even if someone did something really terrible to me, I still made some choices off of that. Now, we've all had people do terrible things to us in our entire life. No one gets through this life unscathed. No one doesn't have scars by the end of their life. How did you handle those scars? How did you handle those moments? So again, always look internally. Don't look externally, because externally, this is when you're vulnerable to people being like, hey, here's this. If you just do this, you can make it easy. That's where you're very vulnerable. Always look inside yourself.
And there's another route. I don't want to say it's the opposite route, but I think it's certainly different than desperation. And I think this is very real, especially in Western societies, especially in American society, to where, okay, I went to school for 4 years. I got this entry-level job. I've worked my way up a little bit, but I also bought a house and I got a car and, I got a bunch of debt and things like that. And I'm seeing these people online, or maybe I'm even seeing people I know who are just out there killing it. And they have all these things and this lifestyle that I really wish I had. And I don't think I'm ever going to get there at the rate I'm going. I need to hit that gas pedal. I need something else. I need to catch up to these people. And it's that, we've talked about desperation before on the podcast. We've also talked about greed. But I don't know if we've ever talked about how it also ties in to taking shortcuts. Rob, I'm not sure if there's anything really more to elaborate on this, but I'll bet it's not always desperation that makes people really want to hit that throttle up button and start taking shortcuts.
There's absolutely a great component here, and I want to share a story with everyone that just happened to me about a year or two ago. I have a friend who works with lots of NFL players, and she works with them in their health and their wellness and their injuries and everything like that. And she had a new rookie who just signed a really big contract, and he just got his signing bonus of $2 million, and he was like, I don't know what to do. He didn't really have anyone in his own personal life that he could go to. So she said, hey, I want you to talk to my friend Rob. And so here is a kid who is new into the NFL. His life's going to dramatically change. And he didn't need to make his rent payment, is what I'm saying. He was fine. But he's like, hey, how can I take this money and make it bigger to where if something happens to me in my career where it only lasts 2 or 3 years, how can I make it to where it doubles, triples, quadruples? And the advice I gave him was, don't ever give your money to other people. Always have it in your own name, in your own accounts. You can have other people help you, but don't ever give it to other people. And the reason I say this is because we just talked about how in desperation, you look outward. You look outward. Who can help me? Who can possibly make this pain go away? It's the same way with greed. It's the same thing. Hey, I've got this guy that tells me that he can triple my money in a year. Here you go. Here's my money. Greed does the same thing. It causes you to look for shortcuts. Look for, hey, you know what? Everyone knows that if you invest in the stock market over time, in the past, it's paid a decent return. Everyone knows if you buy real estate and you hold on to it for a long time, it pays a decent return. Even stuff like gold, silver pays a return. But people want it faster. And that's when they get really, really susceptible to scams. And that's the only time you hear about people getting their money taken, is when they were either desperate or they were too greedy. So really be on watch for that in your whole life. Always look internally.
Yeah, because the downside is the thing you don't see. I don't want to get too far off course here, but it reminded me of when I worked the most lucrative restaurant job I ever had in Vegas. It was tax season, and we were all talking about, if we were getting returns or what the case was. And everybody, because it's all based on your hours, you do claim tips and stuff like that, but we're all kind of making the same thing pretty much. We were all trying to figure out what our tax returns were going to be. And some people went early and they were like, yeah, you're probably going to get about $1,000 back. And, a few other people went like, yep, I got right about 1,000, little over that, little under that, whatever the case was. There were a couple people who went to this accountant in Las Vegas called the Money Man, and they were getting $4,000 back. And they're like, oh, is this guy a registered CPA? And they're like, yeah, he is. I'm like, wow, what am I doing with my account? I need to go see that guy. So this is not something I ever did. Just, I guess the whole idea of him being called the Money Man turned me off. But some people did, and then that guy went to jail 2 years later, and they all got audited. And they probably still get audited, because once you're flagged for an audit, it happens quite a bit.
That is a great story of greed where, again, people didn't need it, but, there's a guy I know, he can help you out.
We were all doing fine. And we didn't even, there was not even desperation. There was just pure, unadulterated greed. And some people fell for it. And I'm not going to lie, it sounded like a pretty good idea, but I thankfully I never went that route. So moving on down from the two obvious ones, other things that might be going on psychologically, Rob. I know we touched on the two main ones. Do you have any other ones to add before we get into the solutions?
Well, there's one more, and it really just goes together. Just think about, and I'm not standing here like, oh, I never did this as a young trader. This was literally me as a young trader. Number one, I don't want to go get a dumb desk job. Number two, I don't really want to go get a college degree. Number three, this trading thing was really cool. It looks like you can make a lot of money. So I was every one of these things we're talking about. It wasn't quite desperation, but there was greed and impatience. Impatience, and this was my biggest one, was impatience. That I looked at all these other ways, and there's, as a 20-year-old, all the doors are open. You can oh my gosh, I could go do this, I could do this. And those were all, 5, 10, 15, 20-year kind of plans, and I picked the shortcut. I wanted the shortcut because that's who I am. And so it comes with desperation, it comes with greed, and by default, it comes with impatience. I'm sure there was 1 out of 100 people that got into Forex and they understood that this was going to take 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years before it really started to pay off for them. I'm sure there's 1 out of 100, but there's 99 of us that lied to ourselves, or we didn't even know enough to lie to ourselves because we didn't even know enough about how trading actually works. So impatience is absolutely one of them. And I love the Malcolm Gladwell book, The Outliers. I know there's a lot of people that say, the whole 10,000 hours thing is BS, and it is BS. Some skills take 10 hours. Some skills take 50,000 hours. Some people learn something in 1,000 hours where another set of people learn it in 2,000 hours. Look, it's a nice round number. It's not really a thing, but it basically says until you spend enough time, effort, and energy at something, you will not be proficient at it. And we've all seen the Dunning-Kruger effect. And if you haven't, jump online, look at Dunning-Kruger, how in the beginning, we all think we're better than we are. And then we get a little bit down the pathway and we get slapped and finally understand, oh, this is really, really hard. And then we have to go through the valley. And the valley is tough. The valley is losing money. It's thinking you have a system that falls apart in the end. It's all of these things that test you. There's no way to become a trader without going through the valley. We have a saying at Maverick, traders aren't born, traders are forged. Forged through fire and pressure and heat and pain. That's how you get out of it. And I thought I was choosing the easy way. I was probably choosing the hardest way to make money in this world. Look, I don't regret it, but I'm telling you, there was an easy pathway, and my son, who's now 22, I'm steering him away from trading because I understand how difficult the pathway is. Let me correct that. He's still trading, but he's not going to be trading for his lifestyle. Trading is going to be something he does along with all the other things he does. Because I thought I was only going to trader, that's all I was ever going to be, and that's it. So I wanted to put him on a much easier path than the path I put myself on.
Well, it's those valleys you talk about too, where I think this desire to take shortcuts starts to pop up, and that really was the whole reason I put this episode together. Because I don't know about you, Rob, but you talked about being impatient, but in the actual realm of trading, did you ever go seek out any other shortcuts? Because I know I did. I did it a couple times, especially my first couple years before I really discovered the way I trade now. I was looking for any way out, especially when things were bad. I've bought signals before. I have bought courses before that I paid money for so they could just tell me something I've already read on a blog for free. I've gone that route before I moved forward. Did it ever come to that for you?
So I'm going to say no. And at first, I don't want anyone to react like, oh, he's saying no, like, oh, he's great. No, that's how egotistical I was. It's ridiculous that I didn't go look for other people because I was so convinced that I was the only person that really knew anything, that I wasn't really willing to go to anyone else for help and assistance. That's me. That's one of my really negative qualities. Look, it's been a very good quality in a lot of things, and a very bad quality is that, again, I always look inside. If something's not working, I'm only looking inside, and it's very egotistical to do that when there actually are people around you that can help you. And if you ask my wife, I mean, she'll tell you all the time that I do not allow her to help just because it's not who I am. So I'm not saying it to like pat myself on the back. I'm saying like this is a major problem in my life that came up in trading where I probably hurt myself by not asking people for some help.
So again, we've touched on the main two, desperation and greed. I think impatience is a really good one. I think that ties in really well. Are there any other things, you're the deep psychological guy, Rob, things that are going on in people's brain. Is there anything else that might be happening when people seek out these shortcuts that we haven't touched on yet? Because I want to get to the solutions, but if there's any more of these aspects that could be floating around, I want to hit them first.
I want to just talk about one concept here, that if you grow up playing sports, I grew up playing sports, I love sports, and there were people that loved the game, but they didn't love practice. They loved the games, but they didn't like practice. Now, the game in Forex is when you are actually clicking the buttons and actually have money on the line. And the games are the best part. I loved games when I was playing football and rugby and all these other sports. I loved the games. But you know what? I understood the practice is where you improve. So a lot of people love the game. You got to love the practice. If you want to succeed in the game, you better put in the work in the practice. The people that put their work in practice over and over and over and over and over again, when they get in the games, they do well. The people that don't practice, they don't do well. So going back to desperation, greed, impatience, talked about the 10,000 hours. In this podcast, we've talked a lot about the effort it takes to become a trader, and it's the practice aspect. It's when you're not on the field. It's when you're back testing something. It's when you're building strategies. It's when you're journaling and doing all the unsexy things in trading. That is how you don't take shortcuts. That's the opposite of taking shortcuts. We all want to take shortcuts. Just understand, you got to put the work in the practice before you can succeed in the game. That's really what I wanted to talk about and just get that into people's minds, that it's the practice that makes you good in the game.
But Rob, I've always been the type of person who has believed that you should work smarter and not harder. And I've always been pretty smart as a kid growing up. I didn't need to study as hard as the other kids do. And now I'm a little bit older and reality's hitting me. And you're preaching all this work and stuff like that. Why do I need to work when I have the Forex baboon over here and he says he can get me 20,000 pips a year guaranteed? One seems like a pretty smart route compared to the other one.
One you have no control over. What if the Forex baboon dies? What are you going to do?
My trading will probably get better by default. would be the real answer there. Yeah, there too. Well, I'll move on to the Forex orangutan. There's always somebody out there who probably does this better than me. Why don't I just take from him? They're offering it.
I'm as an egotistical SOB. I first of all, I don't even understand that concept. But I love to have control. One of the things I've loved so much about being a trader and building my book and building my bank accounts is that I have had the control, and I cannot get the rug pulled out from under me. And Patrick, I'm going to say something crazy on this podcast. And I told my wife this. I said, I want to go get my neck and face tattooed. And she just stared at me and said, what? I said, yeah, because if I tattoo my neck and my face, I could never get a job again. And I want to make sure I never have to. I know that's crazy. And I'm not going to tattoo my neck and face. Actually, I might, who knows? But that's who I am, is that I always wanted to have that kind of control. So look, everyone's built differently. And like I said, there are people out there that help. I mean, look, you're listening to a podcast of two guys that are literally giving you their knowledge. Don't be like me. Accept it. Be open to it. Look and see if it's valuable to you. If it's not valuable, throw it away and say, okay, guys, you're thrown away and I'll go look for something else that has value in my life. That's fine. Do yourself a favor. Put in the work. Have the control. It'll be much more meaningful to you. There are people on the route that are going to help you. And look, I didn't get to where I got all alone. I definitely had help. But look inside. Look inside. Put in the work. That's how you become successful. Successful enough to where maybe you can tattoo your neck and face one day.
I still think you should do it. It'd be like on The Office where you had Steve and then you had Prison Steve. We could have Prison Robb.
Nice.
And he can be a guest. He can be a guest on the show, yeah. But the answer that I would give to the question I was asking you, because you probably didn't pay a whole lot of attention to things like this, to where there was a point in time where I did, and I'd noticed that as far as all of those paid services go, very few of them actually lasted more than a year or two. And usually it was just really good marketing that took them a couple years further. So they're not sustainable. If you really want to do this, this can be, if you want, a lifetime skill. If you're 25 years old and you plan on living to 80, you can do this for 55 years until your brain just completely goes. Tell me that's not worth something. Would you really risk it for 1 year of a signal service when you can actually have something that's forever? I know that's not going to get you out of this situation that you're in right now, but nothing else is either. I hate to break it to you. So listen to what Rob said. That really is the actual solution to this entire podcast. And, that's my solution. You've pretty much said your solution, Rob. Do you have anything else before we go?
Look, we could have saved this whole 45 minute conversation with, you think there's shortcuts. There's not. deal with it. There we go. We should have said that right in the beginning.
We could have, yes, but I think people enjoy our longer form content, and it won't be 45 minutes because you and I talked a lot of bullshit back and forth in between some of these things. So expect a 35 to 40-minute podcast coming up soon, and thank you once again for tuning into the Trading Psychology Podcast. Rob and I will see you in the next episode.
Goodbye, everybody.